Venus was never meant for human eyes. A world sealed beneath toxic clouds, hot enough to melt lead and crushing enough to flatten steel. Yet the Soviet Union kept sending probe after probe into its deadly embrace. Most vanished without a trace, but one survived long enough to transmit something unexpected. What the Soviets uncovered on Venus wasn't just shocking. It raised a question no one has been able to answer, and may reveal why humanity never returned. For decades, Venus had been a riddle wrapped in fire. From Earth, astronomers could see nothing but a thick, blinding layer of clouds, so dense and reflective that even the most powerful telescopes could not penetrate it. Mars, with its open skies and visible terrain, was an open book by comparison. But Venus was a locked vault. And that mystery was irresistible. In the early days of the space race, as global tensions escalated and technological ambition soared, the Soviet Union saw Venus not as a scientific target, but as a prize, a forbidden world waiting to be claimed first. If they could reach it, if they could uncover its secrets, they could surpass the United States not only in politics, but in history. And so they tried. Mission after mission was launched toward the planet, each one representing a bold leap into the unknown. Their first attempts, Venera 1 and Venera 2, flew astonishingly close, within 100,000 kilometers of their target. But both probes failed before they could transmit any meaningful data. They simply went dark, consumed by the overwhelming challenge of interplanetary travel. Still, the Soviets pressed on. Meanwhile, in 1962, NASA's Mariner 2 became the first spacecraft to successfully observe Venus up close. During a 42-minute scan, it delivered shocking data. Venus was not the lush, tropical paradise some had imagined. It was a furnace. Surface temperatures soared above 450 degrees Celsius, hotter than Mercury, despite being nearly twice as far from the sun. The clouds were not gentle mist, but towering layers extending nearly 80 kilometers high. And beneath that cloud deck, one truth became obvious: nothing human or mechanical should survive on Venus. With these revelations, NASA stepped back. The planet was simply too hostile, too dangerous, too costly to justify further missions. But the Soviet Union refused to abandon the chase. If anything, the American withdrawal only fueled their determination. Venus was now theirs to conquer. By 1966, the Soviets were ready for another attempt. They had engineered stronger, heavier, more advanced spacecraft. New Venera probes designed not only to fly by, but to descend into Venus's atmosphere. These missions carried barometers, thermometers, gas analyzers, altimeters, and most importantly, descent capsules meant to plunge through the toxic clouds and transmit data all the way down. The results were both triumphant and horrifying. Venera 3 became the first human-made object to crash into another planet, a historic milestone of failure and achievement blended into one. But it returned no data. Venera 4, however, survived long enough to transmit the first measurements ever taken from inside the atmosphere of Venus. And what it revealed changed everything. At high altitudes, conditions seemed almost Earth-like, warm, breathable, comfortable. But the deeper the probe descended, the more the planet revealed its true nature. Temperatures climbed, pressure intensified, the air thickened into something more like liquid than gas. 90 minutes into its descent, Venera 4 was crushed, flattened by an atmosphere so heavy that no machine of that era could withstand it. But the mission had succeeded in one crucial way. It confirmed that Venus was not merely hostile, it was apocalyptic. And yet, the Soviets were only getting started. By the late 1960s, the Soviets understood one thing clearly. If Venus was going to give up its secrets, they would have to pry them from the hands of a planet built to destroy. The crushing of Venera 4 had been a revelation, proof that Venus was far more dangerous than anyone had predicted. But instead of discouraging them, it only sharpened their ambition. They would build stronger probes, heavier shells, reinforced descent modules. If Venus wanted to fight back, the Soviets were ready for war. And so came the next wave, Venera 5 and Venera 6. Launched in January 1969, these twin missions were designed with one goal: to survive just a little longer than their predecessors. And in some ways, they did. Both probes transmitted valuable data during their descent, mapping the rapid increase in temperature and atmospheric pressure as they plunged deeper. But the story ended the same way: silence, crushed metal. Another pair of machines sacrificed to a world that seemed determined to keep its mysteries buried. Yet the Soviet Union refused to walk away. In the early 1970s, while the United States focused on landing astronauts on the moon, the Soviets quietly shifted their priorities. They had lost the race for human exploration, but the race for interplanetary discovery was still wide open. If they couldn't be the first to walk on another world, they would be the first to truly understand one. That meant returning to Venus again and again. By 1970, the Soviets were ready to unveil Venera 7, a probe unlike anything that had been sent before. It was heavier, denser, and encased in layers of metal, designed to endure the unimaginable. If the atmosphere of Venus wanted to crush it, it would have to try harder. Venera 7 launched into the void and, against all odds, made it to the surface. Barely. During its descent, something went catastrophically wrong. Its parachute either tore apart or melted in the scorching heat. The lander plummeted toward the planet like a stone dropped from the sky, slamming into the ground at terminal velocity. For a moment, mission control assumed the worst. Another failure, another casualty of Venus. But then, a weak transmission flickered through. Venera 7 had survived the impact. For the first time in human history, a spacecraft was operating on the surface of another planet. The signal was faint, inconsistent, barely enough to extract useful data, but it was a triumph. And what the lander reported would confirm the nightmare scientists feared. Temperatures on the surface soared past 475 degrees Celsius, hotter than the inside of a wood-fired pizza oven. The pressure was 92 times that of Earth's atmosphere, equivalent to being nearly a kilometer underwater. Nothing like this existed anywhere else in the solar system. But the Soviets weren't finished, not even close. In 1972, Venera 8 followed, surviving long enough to transmit nearly an hour of data. It confirmed the crushing atmosphere, the volcanic landscape, and something shocking. Despite the thick cloud cover, light still reached the surface. Enough light to take a photograph. That single discovery ignited a new obsession. If the Soviets could land a probe on Venus, if they could survive long enough to capture even a single image, they would achieve something no nation had ever done. And so, they built Venera 9 and Venera 10, monstrous machines reinforced with steel, titanium, shock absorbers, and a new aerodynamic aerobrake designed to plunge through Venus's atmosphere without a parachute. Their mission was simple: survive, land, see. What they captured would become legendary, but it was what they learned about Venus, the heat, the pressure, the acid, that raised a far more haunting question. Why did the Soviets keep returning to a world designed to kill, and what were they truly hoping to find? By the mid-1970s, the Soviets were no longer just trying to survive Venus. They were preparing to look into its face. Venera 9 and Venera 10 represented a new era of engineering, machines built not merely to withstand the descent, but to endure long enough to capture something no human had ever seen before: a photograph, a real physical image of the most hostile surface in the solar system. Each probe weighed nearly 5 metric tons, an armored titan designed to push back against Venus's crushing atmosphere. Their descent modules were wrapped in steel, reinforced with a titanium sphere, stuffed with insulation, and equipped with a strange, flat-bottom landing gear meant to absorb the impact of hitting the ground without a parachute. Because on Venus, even parachutes die, so the Soviets turned the planet's brutality into an advantage. With a dense atmosphere that behaves more like a fluid than a gas, the new aerobrake system allowed the lander to slow down naturally, almost as if it were sinking through an ocean of air. On October 22, 1975, after surviving the fiery descent, Venera 9 touched down on Venus. The world went silent. Then, data, real data, and with it, the first image ever captured from the surface of another planet. It wasn't beautiful, it wasn't dramatic, but it was historic. A barren field of jagged, fractured rocks scattered across a dusty plain, an alien cemetery frozen in endless heat, a landscape so hostile that the mere act of showing it to humanity felt impossible. 4 days later, Venera 10 followed, landing on a smoother region shaped by ancient lava flows. Where Venera 9 saw chaos, Venera 10 saw stillness, a quiet, deadly calm. Together, the images reshaped our understanding of Venus. This was no tropical rainforest hidden beneath the clouds, no lost paradise, no place for life. It was a world forged by fire, sculpted by acid, and crushed by suffocating pressure. And yet, the Soviets were not done. They returned with Venera 11 and 12. Both landed successfully, though malfunctioning lens caps prevented meaningful images. But even without photographs, the message was clear. Venus was revealing itself, one deadly layer at a time. And although no machine could last more than a couple of hours before melting or collapsing, the Soviets were preparing for their boldest attempt yet. A probe that would not only land, but drill into the soil, listen to the wind, and send back the clearest view ever captured from this planet of fire. What they uncovered next would become legend. By the early 1980s, the Soviet Union had done the impossible. They had landed on Venus repeatedly. They had survived its atmosphere. They had photographed its surface. And they had proven beyond any doubt that Venus was the closest thing to hell our solar system had ever produced. But the Soviets weren't satisfied with mere survival. They wanted to understand the world beneath those clouds, to see its true colors, to touch its soil, to hear its voice. And so began the creation of Venera 13 and Venera 14. The most advanced, ambitious, and durable landers ever built for Venus. These machines were not designed simply to endure, they were meant to explore. With reinforced titanium shells, advanced thermal insulation, redesigned lenses, upgraded cooling systems, and a more reliable landing structure, the new probes represented the culmination of 2 decades of engineering evolution. Each lander carried a drill, a sample analysis chamber, panoramic cameras, and even a microphone. Venus would finally be forced to speak. In March 1982, Venera 13 descended into the thick, toxic atmosphere. The parachute deployed, the clouds grew darker, the temperature soared, the pressure climbed to unimaginable levels, and then, touchdown. Against all odds, Venera 13 remained functional, not for 30 minutes, not for 60, but for over 2 hours, far beyond what it had been designed to endure, and during that time, it made history. The probe captured the first color image ever taken on the surface of Venus. Not an artist's impression, not a simulation. A real photograph sent from the most hostile ground in the solar system. The image revealed a landscape of orange-brown rocks, cracked and weathered, scattered across a dusty plain. The colors gave Venus a disturbing sense of presence, no longer an abstract, theoretical inferno, but a real place, a world with weight, a world with history, a world that felt both familiar and deeply alien. The lander's drill extended downward, cutting into the Venusian soil. It extracted a sample and analyzed its composition, revealing a type of volcanic rock similar to tuff, the solidified ash produced by explosive eruptions on Earth. Venus, it seemed, had once been geologically violent, its surface shaped by fire long before it became a furnace. And then came the most haunting discovery of all. From its tiny onboard microphone, Venera 13 recorded the sounds of Venus. A low, rumbling wind, the mechanical groans of the lander as it struggled against the crushing pressure, the hiss of acid-laden air sweeping across its metal frame. It wasn't dramatic or musical. It wasn't comforting. It was an alien world exhaling into human ears for the first and possibly last time. Just days later, Venera 14 followed its sister probe to the surface. It landed safely, took more photos, and attempted to drill into the ground, only to accidentally sample its own discarded lens cap, which had fallen beneath the drill. Even in triumph, Venus found ways to mock human curiosity. Still, the probe returned invaluable data, confirming the composition of the rocks and the structure of the soil. It survived long enough to paint a second picture of that distant, suffocating world. But after Venera 14, the story changed. Venera 15 and 16 were orbiter missions. They mapped the planet from above, but never touched the surface. The era of landers, the machines that dared to descend into hell, was over. Not because the Soviets lacked the skill, not because they ran out of courage, but because reality had shifted. The Soviet Union itself was beginning to fracture. Resources were dwindling, priorities changed, and Venus, for all its mystery, offered little practical reward. A probe to Mars could last for years. A lander on Venus survived mere hours. Politicians saw the cost. Engineers saw the limitations. And slowly, quietly, the world turned its attention elsewhere. The last image ever taken from the surface of Venus, a cracked plain of basalt-like rock bathed in orange light, became a tombstone for humanity's brief, extraordinary encounter with the planet. We left Venus behind, and in doing so, we left unanswered the most haunting question. If this world is so deadly, so uninviting, so impossible to conquer, why were the Soviets so determined to return until the very end? And what, if anything, did they truly uncover down there? For more than 2 decades, the Soviet Union waged a silent war against Venus, a world that crushed steel, melted titanium, and reduced every spacecraft to a pile of scorched metal within hours. And yet, no matter how many probes failed, no matter how hostile the planet proved to be, the Soviets kept returning, again and again, as if driven by something deeper than scientific curiosity. By the early 1980s, after Venera 13 and 14 had delivered the first color images, the first soil samples, and even the first audio ever recorded on another planet, humanity stood at a crossroads. We had finally seen Venus, not through telescopes, not through guesses or theory, but through the eyes of machines brave enough to descend into its inferno. We saw jagged rocks shattered by unimaginable heat. We saw ancient lava plains frozen in time. We heard the winds of a world that has not known calm in billions of years. And in those moments, Venus stopped being a distant mystery and became something real, something alive, something dangerous, something we were never supposed to touch. But after Venera 14, the story simply faded. Not because we reached the limits of engineering, not because Venus had no more secrets to offer, but because the world changed. The Soviet Union collapsed. NASA focused its ambitions on Mars. Budgets were cut. Priorities shifted. And Venus, despite being Earth's twin, despite holding clues about our planet's past and future, was abandoned. No lander has touched its surface since 1982. No probe has sent back an image from the ground in over 40 years. The technology that once braved its atmosphere now sits in museums, relics of a forgotten era. And Venus keeps its silence. The thick clouds still hide a world of fire and pressure. Its surface still burns at 475 degrees Celsius. Its atmosphere still crushes anything that dares to enter, and its mysteries, how it became a runaway greenhouse, whether volcanoes still erupt, whether the planet was once habitable, remain unanswered. But perhaps the most unsettling mystery of all is this: why did the Soviets push harder than anyone else? Why did they continue risking everything for a world that gave nothing in return? What did they hope to find beneath those clouds? And did they uncover something that made humanity hesitate? Today, when we look at the last photographs taken by Venera 13 and 14, we are staring at the final chapter of an exploration that ended too soon. A world that could teach us about climate collapse, planetary evolution, and the thin line between habitability and extinction. A world that is waiting, silently, violently, to be visited again. Perhaps one day, humanity will return to Venus. Perhaps we will build machines strong enough to survive longer than 2 hours on its surface. Perhaps we will uncover the truth hidden beneath its toxic skies. But until that day comes, the last thing we know about Venus is what the Soviets uncovered. If this journey into the most dangerous world in our solar system opened your eyes to what lies hidden beneath Venus's clouds, let me know what you think. Should humanity return to this forgotten planet? Or are some worlds better left alone? Share your thoughts below. I read every comment. And if you want more stories like this, filled with mystery, danger, and the secrets of our cosmic neighborhood, make sure to like, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter of our journey into the universe.